My pod, this pod, or the iPod. I have a scary confession, and I know you might look at me differently after this, but I kind of like Apple. Look, I know they do some stupid shit sometimes. My iPhone 16 Plus still doesn't have a 120Hz screen. I know the Pro does, but I'm not getting a Pro, so fuck you. The lack of USB-A on Macs is kind of dumb, but I sort of kind of get it. The mouse support on Mac sucks in general. Sideloading should be better on iOS. The Apple Vision Pro exists, but honest to God, other than that, I've never really had a bad experience with an Apple device other than my iPhone 6S getting thrown in the washing machine because my mom's stupid like that. I like my Apple ecosystem, and I can thank the iPod for giving me that Apple ecosystem. The iPod! The third thing that saved Apple. Apple had that rough patch in the late 80s, early 90s after Steve Jobs left, and with that, he took the jobs of many, so Apple had no idea what the fuck to do. So they just made whatever they felt like. Here's a PDA. It goes well with your Pippin. Once Jobs came back and saw the shit that was going down, he had like 90 days to fix it before, you know, the company went under. So he was like, all right, we're getting rid of the Pippin. Here's a bunch of translucent plastic. Stupid ass MP3 player. Oh yeah, the stocks were fucking booming. He had gay sex with Bill Gates to get to this point, but hey, a guy's gotta do what a guy's gotta do, Miles. And if we need to make bitches suffer with Internet Explorer on a Mac, then hey, whatever. What are we gonna do? Trump got shot! So yeah, the iPod was a huge success. It had like 99% market share for MP3 players, and while everyone else got like 0.01%, it had like 4 to 5 revisions. It was the literal grandfather of the Apple's most profitable thing in the world. And even the thing you're probably watching this on, an iPad because you're a fucking iPad kid, it was made by Apple. Because who the fuck has a Samsung tablet? But now you're saying, oh, Big Sleeter, why are we talking about this other obsolete piece of pile of trash? Why don't you just make the PS3 modding video and call it a day? I bet this thing doesn't even run Spotify. It does, first off. Second off, this thing has a lot of value. You know, sorry more sophisticated people like myself fucking hate streaming music and we want this shit on a spinning drive. Oh shit, the drive died. iPods are super customizable and easy to hard mod. Bigger batteries, bigger storage devices, throw out that optical disk drive because it'll die any minute. The iPod has so many damn opportunities that are super easy to get into, and anybody could easily turn it into a hobby without competition. I dicked around with a 4th gen iPod Photo, and while the battery's living on hopes and dreams, the fact that I could easily replace it and just get a new working battery and just make it my daily driver in my Nissan is super fucking cool. And the best bit, you can soft mod it. What if, without opening up a perfectly working iPad, you could play lossless music, listen to the Spotify playlists. You actually need to open your iPod for that, so don't listen to me. Okay, but Big Sleeter, okay? You make videos about modding video game entertainment devices. This is just an entertainment device. I guarantee you cannot play Sonic Battle on this thing. You're playing Sonic Battle on this thing, aren't you? Holy fuck, that is Sonic Battle running on an iPod Photo. Look, okay, iPods aren't powerful devices. Quite the contrary, in fact. Maybe having a 20 gig small hard drive and 32 megabytes of RAM isn't the most PC master race of things on the market. Well, it's not on the market anymore, but basically, this thing's a fucking potato. But that doesn't mean the iPod doesn't have games. In fact, go to the extras and bam, there's fucking games. Are you convinced now? Okay, I can continue this video, and you won't be questioning me. You're still probably gonna be questioning me, but okay, whatever. In fact, the iPod Classic had games you could straight up download on iTunes, more complex games too. In fact, 20 of them can be downloaded and played on a 5th gen Classic onwards at this very moment. But with the soft mods, you can get games not once a click wheel game, and even emulators. I rushed furiously to grab the iPod Photo in my drawer, and this thing fucking sucks. What the fuck? The method to do this is very simple on paper. You know Rockbox? It's a really easy to download custom operating system for the iPod that most people go to nowadays, since it allows the iPod to play lossless audio files and is available on literally every single fucking audio player in the world. Rob, hell yeah. Rockbox is the typical go-to when it comes to a custom iPod OS, and Rockbox is pretty beefy and a great alternative to the stock Apple OS. We're only going to be using Rockbox as a gateway to iPod Linux since Rockbox has its own bootloader. Normal iPod Linux is super outdated, and the way of downloading it is even more outdated. Zero Slacker's a fork of that's just kind of a lot easier to do. It also makes my life 10 times easier. Except oddly, it wouldn't let me sync my iPod to my Mac. Like, bro, I have a fucking Mac. But yeah, that's all you need to do. The emulators are right there, loaded in with a bunch of public domain slop. So, you know what we gotta do? We're gonna pirate Mario Land, bitches! Yeah, so remember when I said this thing fucking sucks? Yeah, the emulators, they either don't work or they work like shit. It's really a coin toss. Some emulators just work one time and crash and then never work again. I know it worked one time. I'm not fucking nuts. I'm like the teacher in The Incredibles trying to play video footage of Dash being a dick, but Dash is the iPod emulator and I'm the teacher. I already said that. The click wheel controls fucking suck too. They're super cramped, and because the click wheel is touch sensitive, I often find myself tapping other buttons when I don't mean to. I do like how hard pressures on the click wheel actually do button combos, which is super neat. It's mainly useful in Mario, but yeah. It's not unplayable, but it's barely playable, so. But honestly, all the hardware troubleshooting got me wondering, how do later iPods fare with this? So I purchased myself a 7th gen iPod and a 5th gen iPod. I bought the 7th gen before because, you know, it's newer and like it was actually a lot cheaper. But then I found out iPod Linux doesn't run on a 7th gen. I didn't cancel the order, but I got a 5th gen. Into the collector's pit you go. I went and got to the games and emulators these things had loaded onto it and wanted to see if the 4th gen and 5th gen fare the same or if the 5th gen has the slight edge over it. Now, as of writing this section, I have yet to receive any other iPod other than this one I had previous, but so my hypothesis is, I don't know what the fuck I look like. I feel like they might be the same solely due to the fact I bought a 30 gig 5th gen and they have the same amount of RAM, but maybe other internals kind of give the 5th gen the advantage over it. I mean, hey, it's the video versus the photo. Which one can't play 8 Crazy Nights? The photo wins! While setting these iPods up, doing my research that I usually do, I heard horror stories about any other console that wasn't a Game Boy or Game Boy Color. We'll get to that later. The NES, though, ran surprisingly well for the photo. Obviously, the frame rate isn't the greatest on a screen with a refresh rate of 2, but hey, it works. I tried a couple games here. The one included Bomb something I forget worked right off the bat, but when booting straight into any other ROM, the iPod just crashes. So no matter what, you gotta see the title screen of Bomb Fart, and then you can play Armadillo. Armadillo doesn't work, and neither does Little Samson. I found a ROM hack for Mario 3 called Super Princess Peach 3. It's just Mario 3, but with Princess Peach. I don't know why I got this, but it works, I guess. Mario 1, though, it worked fucking flawlessly. Other than the choppy frame rates, it was really playable. The controls are very cramped, though. They've made it work well enough. I like how hard pressing right makes me run and go forward, but it's not comfortable. I'd rather play this game like any other way. I actually don't really want to play Mario 1, not gonna lie. Also, at random increments, the iPod decides, yeah, I don't really want to do this anymore, which I totally get. Like, you only got 32 megs of RAM. There's only so much you could do, but hey, if you want, Mario 1 works. And so does Princess Peach 3. The Game Gear was actually one of the best to get set up. And not that it ran stellar or anything, it ran on par with the NES, but it was the only console to never crash and actually let me get straight into the action. I played Rystar, and honestly, the controls were the best of any console I played so far. Rystar's movement alongside his tack were really damn intuitive how they set it up, and it didn't make me want to send this whole iPod to e-waste that lives at my work. I haven't gotten around to try any other game with this though, so my only frame of reference is how Rystar ran, and it ran on par with the NES, but was not a stupid bitch to boot into. Shout out to Rystar for being the best Genesis game, except this isn't the Genesis version, it's the Game Gear version, but honestly, with the screen, I could barely fucking tell it was the Game Gear version. The Game Boy Advance passed all the troubleshooting, ran like shit. Also, because the Game Boy Advance, compared to like, you know, everything else here, is pretty beefy, it can't run through iPod Linux. I'm not even fucking kidding. You have to boot into the BIOS and the bootloader. Because the Game Boy Advance I had the least faith in, I actually tried a shit ton of games for this. I tried Mario Advance 2 and 4. They ran poor, but on the scale of everything, it was actually pretty impressive that they ran. I tried also Sonic Advance 1 and 2, and they ran a little better, but Advance 2 would crash the iPod whenever it felt like it, but Advance 1 ran fucking flawlessly. Like, no complaints there. And the last game I tried in order to push the thing was Sonic Battle, which is a 3D arena battle game that's really fucking good. You should definitely play it, and Sega should totally make a sequel. And you're expecting, oh, bigsleeter, that probably ran like shit, right? It ran okay. How can you run, but Game Boy Color games can't run? I just spoiled later on, but how the fuck? I know it's not like playable or anything, like, I mean, hardware-wise it is, like, it is playing, but, you know, the click wheel, you know, Sonic Battle's a more complex game, it's a fucking fighting game, the controls make it unplayable, but I don't know what to think. I don't know what to do. I need to go to work. Oh, I'm late for work. You know, for the console I was guaranteed worked, this one didn't. Game Boy, you know, had the chance to boot here and there, but the Game Boy Color basically was unplayable. Like, every time you boot into a Game Boy Color game, the whole thing RAM crashes, back to the bootloader. But Game Boy sometimes would boot, and when it did, it was the best performing emulator on the damn thing. Yeah, that's right. It is actually very playable. Yeah, I tried Mario Land 2 because that was the only Game Boy game I tried, because everything else was Game Boy Color games, because I was really in the impression that I could play Game Boy Color games, but I guess I can't. Fuck me, I guess. But Mario Land 2 ran fully solid at like either 30 or 60. I don't even remember what the fuck the game runs at. I don't even know the refresh rate of the fucking iPod, but it was playable. it just fucking sucks to get working, and I just don't want to play it. It could just be the fact that it's the 4th gen photo. Either way, it pisses me the fuck off. And overall, the 4th gen photo, it runs like gas, but Game Boy games, when they work, are super playable. So, how's the 5th gen fare? Mostly everything ran the exact fucking same. Game Gear had the least amount of difference, ran just as tolerable, and played as tolerable. Game Boy Advance, pretty much 1-to-1. Other than the fact that the video had a lot more smearing, or whatever the fuck this is called, than the photo, but honestly, whatever. I noticed when I was playing unscaled, it was less noticeable, but I think the noticeability of it all just comes from the bigger screen of the 5th gen. But I gotta say, NES games ran noticeably faster. It was still super choppy, but it was noticeably a lot more speedy than the photo. To the point, I'd almost say it's pretty playable. Hell, even Little Samson, a game I couldn't get on the photo, booted up just fine. Armadillo still RAM crashed it, but hey, we can't all be winners. In iBoy, I couldn't even get a game to boot. But now with this 5th gen and its more sexier internal CPU, we can try out Rockbox's Rockboy emulator. But how does Rockboy compare to iBoy? Well, booting up's a plus on my end. Yeah, on the 30 gig video, Rockboy doesn't run too well. iBoy, when it works, runs significantly better than it, but the fact Rockboy actually boots into games is kind of, it gives it a point. iBoy gets a point for playing games at full speed when, you know, it works. The competition's heated up. But that leaves the 7th gen. Or 6th gen. People don't believe in the 7th gen, like how people don't believe in the tariffs. And Rockboy on 7th gen runs better, but barely. So basically, the key takeaway is that I do not recommend this fucking thing. Emulation on the iPod Classic is really fucking rough, and it's not my go-to when it comes to it. Hell, half the emulators barely worked, even the ones recommended. But most that you'll be doing is Game Boy and Game Boy Color emulation, and pretty subpar emulation on other consoles. So here's where the video ends, right? Big Sleeter's gonna be a Debbie Downer and say that to never touch video games on the iPod, right? But it can play Doom. With Rockbox, there's a long list of games you can play, mostly smaller titles, but some heavy titles like Doom, Wolfenstein, Duke Nukem 3D are all playable and run pretty damn well. Would I recommend playing them on here? Not really, but it's totally novel as fuck, and I think in 2007 people saw this and they would have been going ape nuts over it, especially with how nice they actually kind of run. But even cooler is that there were a bunch of official click wheel games for both the 5th gen and 6th and 7th gen. You got Pac-Man, Suma, there's a mini golf game, a full-ass port of Sonic 1, Asphalt 4, The Sims DJ, but Big Sleeter. Why would I want to do that when I can play Tetris on my phone or Pac-Man on my phone, or I can actually play Sonic 1 on my phone? And I'll answer you this with one question. Why do you want to play Sonic Mania on the Wii? Well, I would recommend you use an iPod for its intended use, music, and the games that are actually playable. The fact that all of this is possible is super cool, and while the gates for— oh my god, I dropped my pills. And while the gates for iPod moddings haven't flourished in years, I hope one day we get a resurgence in iPod modding, and hell, maybe get even better versions of these emulators. Because Sonic Battle running alone made people intrigued, so yeah. Anyway, you know, before I go, I just want to say thanks for tuning in, you know? I was really on the fence of releasing this video this week due to unforeseen circumstances involving 50 states in a popularity contest, but I think y'all deserve a chuckle because a lot is uncertain right now. I will go into more details other than that, but I just ask for y'all to stay safe out there because it's going to be hell these next few weeks, months, you know, years, depending on how you look at it. Also, guess who's got a blue sky? I've had it for a little while, but I think announcing it here might draw more people over to it that haven't moved over just yet. I'll probably be more active there than the 24th letter of the alphabet, the app. So if you want a little peeky weeky at Big Sleeter, what he does, then go over there. Right there. Thank you. And so with that said, have a great day. Not fuck you.